So I have started the recording. So who wants to be first in terms of sharing their flowcharts and pseudocode? And it's really mostly the flowchart because, as I indicated, if you can write the program, then the pseudocode is really neither here nor there.
Oh, this room's so quiet.
Recording in progress.
All right, I guess the silence means nobody wants to share their work or you don't need any feedback. All right, so let's keep the thing rolling. I think I gave enough time for persons to respond, so I'm moving on. So we did mention that one of the things that we want to do is to utilize Visual Studio Code as the primary tool within our toolkit. We have started out by having a look at the Jupyter Notebook, and we see that we can execute on that platform in terms of the different cells, but we might want something a bit more structured if it is you're going to be developing software. And that is where an editor, a programming editor like Visual Studio Code come into play. So you would have already configured your machines. So I'll just do a quick demonstration in terms of how you go about navigating the system so that you can be using it to write up the codes that you want to write up. So what I recommend is having a folder where you're going to be storing your work. In my case, I'm using this project folder. So I'm going to go into the folder. And as you can see, there's a whole lot of things. But for you, let's say you create a folder called vector. And inside this vector folder, you want to put your application. So we have the main folder, which I am calling project. And inside of that, I want to create another folder that I'm going to use to hold my application. So let's say, for example, this is going to be the first application you're going to work on. Then, for example, you could give it like the day that you work in on the elements or whatever naming scheme you find appropriate. What we're doing now is just for demonstration purposes, so you understand how to navigate the system. So once you have the folder that you want to be working in, then you will double click on that folder. And once the folder is open, then what you're going to do is to go to the URL for the folder. So the URL is right up here. So you click on that, and then type CMD and enter. And what that does is it brings you into a command window, a terminal, from which you are going to now launch Visual Studio Code. If you're looking at the file path, you realize that I'm inside the project folder. And inside the project folder, there is a folder here called vector, which is the folder that I want to be working in. So from there, you type code, which is short for Visual Studio Code application, and you use a full stop, which means current directory. So in other words, what I'm doing now is I'm going to launch Visual Studio Code application. And by default, I want to be inside this directory or this folder, this vector folder that I'm currently in. So you do that and then you press enter. And once you do that, then you should end up with a screen looking like this. So this is our Visual Studio Code editor. We can see that by the name, or we can
What
see
was
that
it? VS?
by the icon right here. Pardon me?
What was the command? VS?
Yes.
No, the command was code and then a dot.
Code and then a dot. Remember? Oh, code. Okay. Oh, thanks. Okay.
Am I going too fast?
Yes, sir.
All right, so it would be prudent for you to tell me to slow down so I can go at a pace that is comfortable for you.
Alright. I actually initialized the program to read a set folder. It allows you to do it within the program, you know. This is just a shorter way.
I'm showing you the workflow that I recommend that you use. If you want to use another workflow and it works for you, that's fine. So please let me know when I can continue.
Sir, for me, I am using. Can you start from the folder part, please? Cause I'm using my MacBook and I'm just trying to keep up.
Uh, Remember, I'm working on Windows and all the instructions that I've given, even on the platform, it is really targeted towards Windows. So if you're on another kind of platform, then what you're going to have to do is just kind of watch what is happening so that you get the gist of how things operate. And then you don't have to find what, how to do the similar things on your platform. But the commands might not be the same.
Right. But it,
Sorry, go ahead. I'm muting my mic so you can talk.
oh, I was like, what should I type? But can you show? Is it that I'm supposed to put the app in the folder? That's what I wanted to know.
What I am doing is,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what I am doing is I am opening Visual Studio Code inside an empty folder. That's what I'm doing. The steps that I have used are steps that work on a Windows machine. So I'm showing a workflow to get that done. It might be different on the Mac.
Okay. That's fine. I just wanted to see it again, please.
I am not sure if you're going to get any value from seeing it again if you're on the Mac. Because what I am doing is specific to Windows, which is why I'm explaining that what you need to do on the Mac is to find a way to open Visual Studio Code inside an empty folder. Because me going back through the steps on Windows might very well not be applicable for the Mac. I don't know how the Mac works, but I know that the platforms are different and there might be differences in how you do things. So what you have to go and do is go on YouTube, for example, and ask, how do I launch, or go to ChatGPT, how do I launch Visual Studio Code into an empty folder? And then you follow the steps. Once you follow the steps and you can open up Visual Studio Code into an empty folder, then the rest of things that I'm going to do now will be pertinent to you. I hope that helps and clear up the confusion. All right. So once you have successfully loaded Visual Studio Code into the folder, then what you will see is this Visual Studio screen and it's Visual Studio Code. You will see this screen and you will see the name of the folder that you are in right at that point. So remember, I went inside the vector folder and what I told the system was launch Visual Studio Code or VS Code. Open it using the vector folder as your base. So that's why you see the folder vector up there. That tells you where you are at. The other thing that is going to be important is to open up a terminal. So we can go to view and there is the option here for opening the terminal. We open the terminal and you're seeing it down here. It's actually a PowerShell terminal on Windows. And we know that because we're seeing PWSH. That means it's a PowerShell terminal. And this is just something similar to the command window on the Windows platform that allows you to type codes at a prompt. If you look again inside the terminal, you should get an idea of where you are in terms of your structure. And once again, we're just pointing out that we are inside the project folder. And inside the project folder, we are specifically inside the vector folder. So the vector folder is a subfolder of the project folder, and that is where we are. So note, the two things are aligned in terms of where we are. They are pretty much saying the same thing, just that one shows, or the terminal shows, the entire path, whereas the Explorer window just shows you the subfolder that you are currently in. I'm just giving adequate time so persons can process what I'm saying.
Mine have a few more options listed,
Like what?
more than output or terminal when it came up.
More than output and terminal?
Yeah.
Oh.
Mine have problems, output terminal and 3 dot and PowerShell, etc.
PowerShell over in the right hand corner there.
At the top. Same bannerware
Oh.
terminal.
Oh.
All right. Now, notice well, let me do this first. We can toggle the folder. So when I toggle it this way, I see the arrow pointing down. That means I am inside the folder. So I have expanded the folder. And when I click it again and the arrow is pointed to the side, then that means that I have collapsed the folder. So it is now closed. So let me ensure that the folder is open. And once the folder is open, we have some icons that we can make use of. The ones that we will be working with predominantly are the first two. One says we can create a new file, and the other one says we can create a new folder. Whenever we choose either of these options, we are actually going to be creating the file or the folder within this vector folder. So I'm going to create a file. And it's asking me to name the file. So I'm going to call it program_01.py. .py because we are working with a Python file. Because we're working with Python, we need to give the Python file an extension so that the program knows that the content of this file is to be treated as Python codes. And in that way, it will be able to interpret the code. So we would have spoken about things like the compiler and the interpreter, etc. By giving the file the appropriate extension, then the compiler knows how to treat the information that it finds within that file so that it can compile it to machine language in an appropriate way. So we give our file a name and we press enter. Once we press enter, please note that the file is now open and it's ready for input. We can now type inside of this file. So let's write a simple program then, right? So let's say num1 is equal to input, enter a number. And we know based on what we would have done before that, we need to convert this number into a numeric equivalent. So let us wrap our input statement into the int command. So we are converting the input to a number and we're storing that number inside of num1. And let's do something similar for num2. So num2 is assigned int and then input, enter a number. And I want to differentiate between number1 and number2. So let me put enter number underscore 1 and enter number underscore 2 so that it is clear which one of these statements is being executed. Then let us say that sum or result is equal to num1 plus num2. And finally, let's have a print statement
Print result.
with our f string, which says num1 plus num2 is equal to result. Now, there's nothing that I've typed here that you don't know. All of these are codes that you would have written and executed in the notebook. Please ensure that you save your file. Control S does that on the Windows platform, or you go to File and you click on the Save option. You will realize that right beside most of the commands, there's a shortcut key. And that's why a while ago I had said Control S. Because if we hold on the Control key as well as the S key, then it triggers the save command. So for those who like to use shortcuts, then you can memorize the shortcuts. But if you don't want to be using the shortcuts, then use your menu bars and navigate to what you need. Remember, View and Terminal brings up the terminal, and to save, File and Save allows you to save. So we have created our first Python program inside Visual Studio Code. And once again, give it some time so that you can absorb what has been said and ask the questions that you might need to ask.
All right, sir. Give me some time to key it in because with the video, when watching, it's difficult to work on the same unit.
Question, sir.
Go ahead.
Why are we using the VS Code, or is it another platform we can use instead of using the notebook?
All right. Well, remember when we started over, I said we will be using the notebook so that we can.
That is the best way we could explain it. I'll buy an next computer though. We want to sell it though because, well, you know. She was probably offended. We do that. I mean, you never know. She popped up here yesterday, last year. Not to mention who is going to even want this? That's the next thing to. As they see this as sticker, yeah.
Delani, I think we're hearing you.
Yeah, Jelani, we get the whole of that.
All right. So when we started off, I said that we would be using the notebook because it allows us to quickly type up the codes. But as you can see, the notebook, it arranges things in terms of cells. And for you to execute the program, then you go to each cell and you execute it one by one going down. That is not the way in which you are going to deploy your solutions or give your solutions to the end user so that it can be used. So you need a platform that is more amenable to writing the code and providing it in a way that you can now deploy it or give it to your clients. That is why we are now looking at Visual Studio Code. Because in Visual Studio Code, we now can create our program files, which contains the code. And then all we have to do is to execute the program file. And once we have done that, then we end up with an executable file that we can then give to the end user. And all they have to do to run our program is to execute that executable file, which is where we're going. We just don't reach there yet. But since you asked, I'll just give you the full picture. And then as we go through, then I'll be jumping back into the folder so you can have a look at what is happening inside the folder.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, man, no problem. So please let me know, folks, when I can continue. So that means you'd have typed up all of this already, and then we can move on.
Sir, this might just be a simple question, but why the space between 2 and 4 and 5 and 4 and 6?
The space between
The lines, the block.
readability. We write programs so that it can be maintained in the future, because programs invariably going to have some issues or will need to be modified to meet new processes which are happening in the organization. So it's just like when we're writing an essay and we ensure that put it in paragraphs one so that we can clearly see where each paragraph begin and end. And also on the lines, we put in enough white space between each word so that we can easily distinguish what the words are. So it's a similar manner. We are writing codes within a file, but we want to write the code in such a way that it is easy to read and digest. Yeah, man, no problem. That's why we're here, so that they can ask these kind of questions and, we get more clarity, because we're not assuming that anybody here has expertise in terms of programming. Yeah, so these are the type of questions, you know, that you ask and you get your clarity on, which is why I like when you interact and you ask these kind of questions. Yeah, so the two young ladies have asked nice questions. No, man, you ask the questions. That is why I am pausing. Remember, you said I was going too fast. So I'm slowing down the pace. I'm giving you time so that you can type up the code and then you ask. Because once we get this out of the way, then the other sessions will move much faster because you would have now been exposed to this. The codes you already know, but how do you string the codes inside of this environment that you don't know yet? So that is what we're showing you now. Now, once you get comfortable with that, then I can say, write a program using VS Code, and it just come and you max it out. And we can move through that quickly because now you have experience with all of the different components. So I'm seeing two persons who have indicated that they are finished. So we are waiting on the others. So that's the Sasha and that's the Queen. I'm seeing Courtney. So once you reach a halfway point, then we can move ahead. We need two more persons to weigh in.
Sir, me see a light bulb.
Maybe it's the Lord coming for you.
Sir, it's in between, and it said some more extract variable, right, sir? Show code action.
Yeah,
What?
I would recommend that you don't do anything different from what I'm doing.
Yeah, but the
Yeah,
bulb just
so
appear.
yeah, man, so just leave it alone. Don't trouble it. If you have done everything that I have done, then you should be fine.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can run those jokes with Courtney because I know he'll not be offended. I'm a bit concerned though, because it shouldn't be taking so long to type up this. Because as I was going along, I paused enough time so that you could have been right where I was. So all you needed to do now is to type in the code. And you shouldn't have taken this amount of time to type in the code. So what's happening? One of the challenges with having these kind of modalities is that I am not able to see. I don't know if it's distracted and you're gonna have to do something else. You move from the computer. I don't know. So if you folks don't share with me what is happening from your perspective, I won't know. And I just have to assume that things are going according to plan
Sir, me
and
done
move
type
on.
them long time, you know.
Yeah, man, but I called out the persons who I typed and I got three persons. Courtney, Sasha, and Kiwian. All right, I'm going to move on. So we have the code. We have inputted the commands as we think they should be put in terms of syntax. And we are now going to try and execute the code. So we are now going to the terminal and we type Python and then we type the name of the file, which in my case is prog_01.py. And once I do that, then I'm going to hit the enter key and I'm going to see what occurs. So Python, a space, followed by the name of the file that we want to execute. And notice I am now seeing some output. It says enter a number 1, which is the same input statement that we had placed inside of the program. So I can now enter, let's say 10, and then I press the enter key. And it now says enter a number 2. And I can now put 5, and I hit the enter key. And the output says 10 plus 5 is equal to 15, which matches what my F string says on line 6, because I'm displaying what is in num1, what is in num2, with the plus operator in between. And then I'm also displaying what is inside result, which would have been num1 plus num2 being assigned to result, demonstrated on line 4. So it therefore means that our program is running correctly. Now I am going to make a small modification to the program because I don't like how the 10, which is the input, is attached to my prompt. And I don't like how the number 5 is attached to my prompt. So I'm going to go back to my program and make some modifications. So on line 1, I'm putting in 2 spaces. On line 2, I'm putting in 2 spaces. Control S to save, or remember, you go to file and you click on save. And then I'm going to clear the screen, CLS, that clears the screen. And then I'm going to re-execute my program. So it's Python. I already see that it kind of keeps the commands for me. So I can just press the right arrow key, and that carries me to the end of the command, and then I can re-execute.
Opera brings back the previous commands too.
So I'm now seeing my prompt, enter number 1, and I'm seeing that it now gives me some space that separates the input from the prompt. So 10, we're seeing that it's happening for number 2 as well, which means it looks more tidy. So that's 5, and 10 plus 5 is equal to 15. So we have created our first program. Now, this program compiled properly. If it did not compile, then we would have gotten some errors, some syntax errors. So it means that all of the commands are accounted for. They have been written properly based on the rules of the language. And then I have compiled the program and I have executed the program, which leads me to going back to where we started. So here we are inside our folder. Go to details. My hidden items are there, but I'm not seeing my exe file. All right, so I'll have to look on that.
So
I'm
is
not
it
sure
that
if I change.
it automatically compiles it, or you have to send?
No, man, once you run the Python commands, it compiles it. It would
Oh,
not have executed here if it was not compiled. All right, let me.
maybe they set up the output folder different.
No, same folder I'm going to use.
All right, let me look on mine. Nah, there's nothing there. So hidden is there. It's not there. Just
All right, so that's something that I will have to go back and look at as to where the exe file is actually placed.
one is new.
All right, so I will keep up the session with that. I think we have shown the primary thing, which is we create our files, and I've shown you how to execute the file. Are there any questions?
No, sir, just looking.
All right, excellent.
Christine said no.
So your mission, should you choose to accept, is to take the codes that you would have written already in the notebook, create a folder, put each of those codes in a different file, execute it, and ensure that each of the program execute properly. And what that does is it gives you the experience in terms of using Visual Studio Code to actually create your program files and build out a program using this particular tool, which is what we're going to start to standardize on from now until the rest of the class.
Sir, I actually, when I just set it up, there's a migration tool for that which we did already within.
Yeah, man, and I'm saying there's a whole heap of ways to get things done. I'm just showing one workflow that I am recommending. For me, it doesn't make any sense that we look at 50 different ways to do the same thing. So we're looking at one workflow. If you want to use another workflow, then I mean, feel free. All right, so let's create another file. So going through the process again, but albeit we can now move a little bit quicker because now you're kind of used to what the process is. So I'm inside the folder. I'm going to click to create a new file. I'm going to call it prog_02.py, and it opens up the new file. I can close the previous file because I'm not using it again. And we now have our new file ready for us to type inside our codes. And let us say for I in range 1, 5, print f string, the value of I is so what we're trying to do here is to create a loop. So we would have looked at loops. So we're trying to see, can we recreate a loop inside of this structure? So let us save. I'm going to clear the screen, CLS. And then let's execute. I'm changing it to program2.py. And I hit enter. And you should be seeing that our loop is actually looping. The value of I is 1. The value of I is 2, is 3, is 4. Remember what we said about the range is that it starts at the first number and it goes up to, but does not include the last number. So in this case, it's going to run from 1 to 4. And we have displayed the output on the screen. So things are running well. We are seeing that we can write a variety of programs by virtue of using this methodology. And if we physically look inside the folder structure, then we're seeing that we have the two files that we had created actually embedded inside of that folder structure. So in other words, we know where to find things. So I'll just give you a few minutes to try out that as well, and then I will move on. Yes, you need to save the file first. That's why in both examples I've used, I indicated that I am saving now. Yeah, man, no problem. All right, so I think that you got enough time to play around and you know what your mission is. And I hope that everyone will take on the mission. There's another thing that I'm going to do now, which to be to be candid, it's not within the scope of what we should be doing. But I think it might be prudent so that you can have a deeper understanding the capabilities of of um of the tool that you have before you, especially for those who plan to go somewhere down the route of software development. So this is not something that you need to know for testing purposes. It's just to give you enough information so that depending on where you see yourself, you kind of better understand what is involved. So I'm going to place a file inside my folder. So remember, this is the folder. If we look in Visual Studio Code, we are seeing two files right now inside the folder, prog1 and prog2. I'm going to place another file in the folder. You won't have access to this file. Remember, this is just for the demonstration purposes. So I've just carried across a file called data.csv. It's a comma separated file that has in some data in it. You should see that my folder being represented in VS Code has been updated because I'm now seeing the CSV file here. So I click on the CSV file and you can see that it has in just few data elements. At the top is the column structure. So we have name, age, and role. And then inside of it, we have some values: John Doe, 30, analyst; James Smith, 25, engineer, etc. So I'm going to do a few things. When you're developing professionally, you want to use something which is known as a version manager. And what that does, it allows you to keep track of your files and the changes that you have made to your files. Another thing that you want to do is you want to create what is called a virtual environment or an isolated environment. So I'm taking it one step at a time. So first of all, we are going to initialize this folder structure by using a command called UV. You won't have access to UV now because it's something that you would need to install. So I'm going to use UV init, and I want you to have a look over here at the inside the folder structure because UV init is going to be doing some things over here. So let me hit enter. And it was pretty fast, but you realize that we have a folder called Git. And Git is actually the version manager application that we spoke about just a while ago. You also realize that we have some additional files that were created. We have a file called project.camel, and that's the one that I want to focus on right now. And specifically, I want to focus on the part that says dependencies. So how these applications work is, as we develop software, we might want to make use of code that already exists so that we can get the kind of functionality or operation that we want within our program. So these are going to be packages that have already been created, and we can incorporate these packages inside of our application. That's what we can do. And in order to do that, we have to install these packages. And we can use the UV command to do that. The first step, though, is that we need to initialize our folder so that the version management application takes over. And you note that each file now has a U beside it to say that these files are not being tracked. What that means right now is not important to us. Because remember, all I'm doing now is doing a demonstration. I will be pointing out the parts of the demonstration that I really wanted to focus on. And the part that I really wanted to focus on is that we can install these additional packages that give us new functionality inside of the application. So we have the UV, and we have used that to initialize the folder. And we want to make use of new packages that are not a part of this project as yet. But before we do that, we want to create a virtual environment. So we can use the UV command with the virtual environment command. And once we do that and press enter, then notice it says we have created a virtual environment. And it tells us what the default name of the virtual environment is. It's called .venv. And if we look inside our folder structure, you now notice that we have a .venv folder that has been created. So this is important, because what we're going to do now is we are going to install our packages so that they are inside of this virtual environment. And why this is important is that each package comes with a different version number. So it gets updated over time. So I will write this project now, and within 2 months, something might change. And if something changes then, and I'm using the newest version of the packages, then this program that I have now in its original form might not work. So what we want to do is have a way where we can install the versions that work, and then we can move around this program from developer to developer, and it still works because it has a note of which version of the packages it is supposed to work. So I'm going to clear the screen, and I'm now going to add a package. And the package that I'm going to add is called pandas. And this package called pandas will allow me to read that data file, that CSV file that I had created earlier. So I'm now going to install pandas, and I want you to look at the dependencies line 7, to see what changes. So I'm adding pandas. You can see that it's executed and it has finished executing. And looking at the dependencies section, realize that it has been updated. What is it telling you? It's telling you that we have installed a package called pandas. And more importantly, it's telling you the version. The version is 3.0.3. So that is the version that has been installed. And what it means is that the code that I'm going to write to make use of pandas will be compatible with that particular version of pandas. All right, so I think I can move on. Let me just check the chat. No, I did not say a virtual machine. I said a virtual environment, not a virtual machine. That's a different concept. All righty.
Just like
So I guess,
database, you would insert access runtime.
say that again.
In database programming, some people do the cheap ones that run off of access. So is it that you could insert that package in it as you go along? Like actually depend on access runtime in order to operate.
Okay. If you're using it as an analogy, yes. So once we clear that, it's just an analogy that you're using, that's fine.
Yeah, man, that's what I.
All right, cool. All right, so I have installed the package called pandas, and I now want to make use of it. So I'm going to create another file, and let me call this read data.py, because that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try and read the file that we have, this same data file here. So you see what is inside of it, right? So I need to make use of pandas. So I'm going to import it. I'm importing pandas. And when I import it, I need to give it an internal name. So I'm going to call it PD. So whenever you see me refer to PD, then what I'm referring to is pandas. I'm going to say PD dot. And what this does is allow me to see some of the operations which are provided by pandas. And what I'm interested in is the read CSV command, because I'm trying to read a CSV file. Inside my bracket, inside quotes, I'm going to put the name of the file, which is data.csv. So remember, I had placed that file right here in my folder. And my program, my py file, is same place inside of this folder. So I don't need to qualify this with a path, because it's going to look inside the current directory. So I want to use pandas to read a CSV file, and the name of the CSV file, which is found in the current folder, is called data.csv. And I want to put that into some variable. We're going to call that variable df for a data frame. Now, If that runs properly, then what it means is that the data is not going to be stored or loaded internally into the data frame. And what I can now do is do a print of the data frame, and I want to use the command called head, which will give me maybe the first couple of rows, maybe first 5 rows or so. And I'm going to save this file, save, clear my terminal, and then I'm going to try and execute this file. Remember, it's called read underscore data dot py, and hit enter. And you should be seeing here that we have successfully used pandas to actually read the content of the file. So the content of this file is now stored inside that variable called df. So for all intents and purposes, this thing called df is almost like an internal Excel sheet. So here's what we are going to do. We are going to see if we can display one of the, well, before I even do that, we have displayed the first couple of rows, but can we get some additional information from the data frame? For example, if we want to see the list of columns which are available, can we see that? So we're going to try that. So df dot, and there's an option here called columns. And let me comment out the df dot head. Let me save. Let me clear the screen and let us run again. And if you look carefully, you realize that it is listing out all of the columns that it has found. There's a column called name, there's one called age, there's one called role. And this is consistent with going back to the data file and looking at the header file or the header row. There's name, there's age, there's role. Those are the 3 columns that we have. Any questions? All right, so it sounds like everybody is good. So let's make one more change inside of this code base. So let's comment that. And let's try to print the content of a column. So data frame, and let's say that we want to see all the rows. So let's save. So notice we're accessing it just like we would access like a dictionary or well, more like a dictionary. Because if it was a list, then this would be something like a 0 or a 1. But just like a dictionary where we put the key value. All right, so let's execute again. All right, so it's not finding role. Did I call it role or role? Well, I called it role. Not finding it, which is strange. Ah, I think my data file is corrupted. Let me find, I'm going to look for another data file. These things are being stored as a string and they should not be stored as a string, which means something is wrong with this data file. Give me a second. Let me find a proper CSV file. All right, so I carried one across on movie data. Let me open that one. All right, I just wanted to have a look at the two files. So this is movie data. Notice that you don't see the double quotes around the values. And when you compare it with this one, notice that on each line, the double quote is around the entire elements. So that's why I'm saying that this is not a proper data.csv is not a proper CSV file because we shouldn't have those string characteristics around the data.
I think when you run it, it said something about object type.
Okay. So this is a proper CSV file. So let's reconfigure the demonstration using that. So it's called what? Movies data. So we're reading another file. Let's print the head. And then let me say print. And we just put some separating lines and a new line. So that we can distinguish between the different pieces of output. Let's print the columns. And then this one now has age, gender, and genre. So let me print age. So age. And let us save. And those who want to say a prayer, please say a prayer. So Python read data.py. So first of all, we printed out the first 5 rows using the head command, which gave us this. And I should have picked up from the start that something was wrong when I looked at the how the data was presented using the first file because it was not aligned properly. You can see here, I had indicated earlier that Pandas is almost like an internal Excel sheet, right? If you look at this, you can see how it nicely aligns under each of the column, which is similar to what would happen if we actually had this data inside an Excel sheet. So that's the first thing. We print the head. Then remember, we wanted to have an idea of what the columns were. And here we have that. So there's an age column, a gender column, and a genre column. And then finally, we wanted to print age, which means we're printing out all the data that we find under the age column. And these are all of the data that we find. So for record 1, the age is 20, record 2, 23, and you can see all the ages going down. If we go back to the data file and you just look at it, so the last age here is 35, but the last age that we have here is 35. And if we look at the first age, it is 20. And the first age that we have here is 20. So we are seeing that we are reading from the same file. Now, this is just a demonstration of what is possible when we make use of the packages which are available out there for use. Internally, we have our own commands, which on your syllabus that we look at to read from a file. But we are saying that there are easier ways to do things once we have access to the right packages and know how to use them. I'm seeing a question from, but I'm seeing a question. Go ahead, Christine.
Yes, sir. If it is that we have an Excel file with some data and we wanted to generate a graph, is it possible to use this VS Code?
All right. Let me modify what you said. If you have Excel data, then you can import that data over here into Python. Yes, that is possible. Just like how I can import the CSV file data over here in Python. Now, can we create graphs in Python? Absolutely. So there is a package, and this is why I went through all of this, even though it's not on your syllabus. There is a package called matplotlib. Let me type that in the chat. Matplotlib. And there's another package called cborn. These are the two visualization packages that we can use to create graphs using data like what we have here over here in Python. So you can create your own application that can do analysis on data and display graphs, which are just as impressive as if you're doing it inside of Excel. Yes, that's the short answer.
Okay, sir. Second question. So if I have data loggers at work, and the data loggers will log temperatures every 4 hours. So at the end of the month, you pull down that data, all those data. Suppose it is that, so I'll have all data from January to December. And suppose in December, I want only March data, the graph for March data to be generated. Is that possible?
Yeah, man. You do a filter. The filter will pick out based on the month. And then you run your matplotlib command, and you generate your graph for that. Yeah, straight. So you're seeing the application, which is good. The same thing can be done in Excel, obviously, right? But when you're
No,
using
sir.
some,
Excel take too long, sir. Take me too long.
well, which is where I'm going. You see this thing called Pandas? It is like Excel on steroids. It has been optimized for these kind of operations. Yeah. So I'm glad that you're seeing the utility. So here what to do. So when you build your first working app for your company and then give you a promotion because you're a superstar, just remember me, all right? 2 tires.
Yes, sir.
Just the money party my talk about, you know.
What size? What size? What size?
All right. But I'm glad that you're able to actually tie it in and see how it could fit in a real world context. Yeah, so I'm really glad for that.
Sir, maybe when you have some time, may I sit down and I show you something and you can give me some guidance.
All right. So what I should charge as a consultant?
We're going to talk about it off here, man.
Okay, all right.
You know, tell the man Jesus.
So,
What
so
what you drink? What kind of what's your drink of choice? Water, cranberry juice.
what got bigger than water and cranberry juice, man?
Okay.
Yeah, we can sit down and talk.
Yeah, man, definitely.
Give me a second, please, folks. Yeah, but I'm glad for what transpired a while ago because what it does is it allows you to see the utility of what it is you are learning. Yeah. So there's great utility in this. You can write customized apps that can make your work simpler. Yeah. And that is why we write programs, to do things just like that. Also, what I have been showing you and what I will show you really is notice that the commands are being executed in we call it a command line interface. But there are ways in which we can quickly mock up user interfaces, graphical user interfaces. So there's another package called Streamlit, and there's another one called Radio. And these allow us to quickly create web-based interfaces that allow us to interact with some of these things that we are creating. So that chart that you're talking about, Christine, you are most likely going to want to display it on some web interface. You'll be using something like Streamlit to display it. And if you want to get like an image, just quickly get the image from that, and you can put it inside a report document if it's so true. So you have a great amount of power when you learn to write programs. All right. So any other question? because this is where we're going to stop. This has been a mouthful, but in
So
the
the
other
package is
classes,
called, you said the package is called Streamlit.
right?
What do you, so Streamlit, what about K Tinker? T Kinter, sorry.
I think that is a kind of Windows-based GUI.
Your right elbow, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Your
Yeah.
right elbow. Literally says elbow.
So here's the point.
Right body part. Your right. It says right.
Microsoft Excel is like a Windows-based GUI, right? It is self-contained,
Right elbow.
but most of the applications nowadays moving away from this kind of an interface because it is harder to deploy, meaning you have to package up everything in terms of an exe and send it, and them have to install it on their machine. And when it change, them have to install the update. If it's a web interface, then once you open the web interface, you just see the new interface and you're good to go. So you don't have to download things and update things on the user machine every minute. So most applications, are web-based. If you realize, just have a look around. Most of the applications which are being developed are using web-based interfaces. So that's why I said Streamlit already.
Mm.
And you don't lose anything because the web interface comes with the same kind of buttons and icons and elements that you're going to interact with anyway. So you're getting a full experience same way. So yeah. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing as I have completed what I want to complete, and you know what is on your agenda. You're going to go through, start experimenting, getting used to VS Code, all of those codes that you have already. You're going to create a folder structure, and inside of your folder structure, you're going to create individual .py files and put your code in them. Then you run them and make sure that each of them giving about the same output that you would have obtained over there in the notebook. So that's us for the night, folks. So let me stop the recording.